The moment the alien queen saw the wound, her expression broke. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't controlled. It was the kind of reaction rulers trained their entire lives to never show. Yet there it was, raw, undeniable, and filled with something that did not belong on the face of the most powerful being in the sector: fear. The vast imperial chamber fell silent. Towering columns of luminous crystal stretched toward a ceiling that simulated a living galaxy, stars drifting slowly like breathing light. Rows of nobles lined the obsidian floor, their elegant forms frozen mid-motion. Every eye had turned toward the lone human standing at the center. Commander Elias Vance did not move. Years of training held his posture steady, even as the tension thickened around him. His uniform bore the subtle damage of a mission gone wrong: scorch marks, microscopic fractures, the quiet evidence of something violent and unknown. But none of that had caused the reaction. It was the wound. Partially hidden beneath his collar, it pulsed faintly like light trapped beneath skin. Not red. Not natural. A soft, shifting silver that seemed to move when no one looked directly at it. The queen stepped down from her throne. Each step echoed with authority, but the rhythm was slower now. Measured. Careful. As though she were approaching something dangerous. Something that could not be undone once understood. Around her, advisors exchanged uneasy glances. These were beings who had witnessed supernovae from orbit, who commanded fleets capable of erasing civilizations. And yet now they hesitated. Because of a human. Because of a scar. Elias noticed everything. The shift in posture. The tightening of shoulders. The subtle retreat of those closest to him. Instinct sharpened in his mind. This was no longer a diplomatic meeting. Something had gone very wrong. The queen stopped only a few steps away. Her violet eyes locked onto the faint glow beneath his collar. The chamber lights dimmed slightly, as if the environment itself adjusted to observe the phenomenon more clearly. Elias exhaled slowly. He had been through worse situations. At least that's what he told himself. But deep down, he knew something about this moment was different. This wasn't a battlefield. This was something older. The wound pulsed once. A soft ripple moved through the air. Several nobles stepped back instinctively. Elias did not. That was the difference. Where other species recoiled from the unknown, humans leaned toward it. Not recklessly, but relentlessly. Curiosity had carried them from a fragile planet into the vastness of space. And now it had brought him here. The queen raised her hand slightly. The entire chamber stilled. Even the faint hum of advanced technology seemed to fade into silence. She moved closer. Close enough now that Elias could see the faint geometric patterns glowing along her skin, symbols of knowledge and lineage, shifting like equations too complex to comprehend. Yet none of it mattered. Not compared to the mark. A faint energy flickered between them. Elias felt it instantly. Like static across his nerves. The wound reacted. Pulsed again, brighter this time. Across the chamber, systems flickered. Energy barriers activated without command. Defensive constructs shimmered into existence along the walls. The Empire's security network had responded automatically. To him. Elias kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. Containment. He recognized it immediately. When something unknown appeared, advanced civilizations followed a pattern. First observation, then isolation, then control. And if control failed, elimination. He was no longer a guest. He was a variable. The queen's hand moved closer to his chest. Not touching. Hovering. The air between them seemed to tighten, as though reality itself resisted what was about to happen. Elias allowed it. He didn't step back. Didn't flinch. Because that was another human trait. Endurance. He remembered fragments of what had caused this. A mission beyond map space. Coordinates that shifted without reason. A region where stars bent unnaturally, where instruments failed, where logic itself seemed to unravel. The celestial rift. No ship was supposed to survive it. His hadn't. At least, not completely. He remembered the moment clearly. The alarms, the silence, and then, not bright, not blinding, but aware. It had felt like something was looking at him. Not scanning, not analyzing, watching, choosing. Then darkness. When he woke, he was alone. His ship was gone. His crew was gone. Only the wound remained. The Queen's fingers moved closer. The entire chamber held its breath. The moment her hand hovered just above the mark, everything changed. A wave of energy spread outward. Not explosive, not violent, but absolute. The crystalline floor rippled like water. The air bent, distorting light for a fraction of a second. Every system in the chamber surged at once, then stabilized. Silence returned. But it was heavier now, deeper. The Queen slowly withdrew her hand. Her expression had changed. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Recognition. Elias felt it too. The wound pulsed again, steady, almost rhythmic. Like a heartbeat that wasn't his. Above them, the simulated stars flickered. For a brief moment, the galaxy projection shifted. The familiar constellations vanished, replaced by something impossible. A moving pattern. Corridor of light. Alive. Then it was gone. The chamber returned to normal. But no one moved. No one spoke. Because everyone had seen it. The Queen straightened slowly, her gaze never leaving Elias. And in that silence, something became clear to every being in the room. This was not an accident. This was not damage. This was not survival. This was something else entirely. Something chosen. Elias stood there, calm but alert, as the weight of that realization settled over the chamber. He didn't fully understand what had happened to him, but he understood one thing. Whatever had marked him was still connected, still active, still watching. And for the first time in generations, the most advanced empire in the galaxy faced a truth they could not ignore. The human before them was not just alive. He was impossible, and somewhere beyond their understanding, something had decided he should be. No one in the chamber spoke. Not because they lacked words, but because every instinct told them that speaking might shatter something fragile, or awaken something far worse. The silence pressed in from all sides. Commander Elias Vance stood unmoving at the center of the Imperial Hall, aware that every eye remained fixed on him. The earlier tension had transformed into something sharper, more focused. This was no longer simple fear. This was recognition. The Queen took a slow breath. When she moved again, the entire court reacted instinctively, stepping back just enough to give her space. Authority returned to her posture, but it was different now. Controlled, yes, but edged with caution. Her gaze remained locked on the wound. Elias could feel it pulsing beneath his skin, steady and deliberate, as if responding to her presence. The sensation was no longer unfamiliar. Felt intentional. Like a signal waiting to be answered. Around them, the chamber system stabilized fully, but the defensive constructs did not vanish. They hovered quietly along the walls, active and ready. Watching him, Elias noticed. He noticed everything. Containment had escalated to readiness. That was not a good sign. The Queen raised her hand slightly, and a faint ripple of energy spread outward. Instantly the chamber sealed. Tall crystalline doors fused seamlessly into the walls, and a transparent barrier shimmered across every exit. Isolation. Elias let out a slow breath. So this was happening. Still he did not resist. Humans had learned long ago that resistance without understanding often made things worse. Observation came first. Adaptation came next. Survival depended on it. The Queen stepped closer again, slower this time. Measured, careful. The distance between them closed to almost nothing. Elias could see the faint glow of energy moving beneath her skin, patterns shifting in response to something deeper than conscious thought. Her hand rose once more. Again it stopped just short of contact. The wound reacted instantly. A pulse of silver light spread outward, stronger than before. The air vibrated with it, a low hum building beneath the surface of reality itself. Several nobles staggered back. One nearly lost balance. Elias remained steady. That was the difference. Where others felt instability, he felt connection. The queen's expression shifted. Understanding deepened. The wound pulsed again. This time the ceiling reacted. The artificial starfield flickered violently, then dissolved completely. In its place, something else appeared, clear, detailed, impossible. A living map. The celestial rift. Gasps echoed through the chamber. For centuries, the rift had remained an unsolved mystery. A region of space where ships vanished, where signals died, where even light behaved unpredictably. Yet now it was displayed above them in perfect clarity. Not chaos. Structure. Elias stared upward. He recognized it instantly. Not from memory. From instinct. "That's it," he whispered under his breath, almost without realizing. Path. The same corridor of shifting light he had seen before everything went dark. It moved slowly across the projection, threading through the violent storms of distorted space. Perfect route. Stable. Precise. Possible. The chamber erupted into murmurs. Not panic. Not fear. Something closer to disbelief. Because for the first time in recorded history, the impossible had been mapped. And it had come from a human. The queen stepped beside him. Her gaze followed the glowing path above. Her voice, when it came, was quieter now, but carried more weight than before. Not fear. Certainty. Elias felt it. A shift. The moment when doubt turned into understanding. The wound pulsed again, softer this time. Responsive. Live. And then something changed. Elias felt it before anyone else. Pressure. Subtle. But undeniable. Like the feeling of being watched. Not from within the chamber. From beyond it. His eyes narrowed slightly. The projection above them flickered again. The stable path shifted. Not randomly. Deliberately. The entire court fell silent once more. Because now the map was changing on its own. No input. No command. The corridor adjusted, bending slightly, extending deeper into the rift. Patterns formed that no system in the empire had ever recorded. New routes. New structures. New possibilities. Elias felt his pulse quicken. Not from fear, but from realization. This wasn't a replay. This wasn't memory. This was happening now. The wound pulsed in sync with the shifting map. One beat. One change. One connection. Queen saw it too. Her expression hardened, not in fear, but in understanding of something vast and dangerous. The truth settled over the chamber like gravity. This was not human technology. This was not alien technology. This was something older. Something that did not belong to any known civilization. Elias exhaled slowly. "So, it's not done," he muttered quietly. No one laughed this time. Because everyone felt it. The presence. The awareness. Watching. Waiting. The projection surged once more. For a brief moment, the entire chamber was flooded with silver light. And then, stop. The map stabilized again. But it was no longer the same. The path was clearer now. Deeper. More complete. Like it had been updated. Elias lowered his gaze slowly. His hand moved instinctively toward the wound, stopping just short of touching it. He didn't need to. He could feel it. The connection remained. Strong. Active. Real. Around him, the nobles no longer looked at him with fear alone. There was something else now. Respect. And something even rarer. Uncertainty. Because for all their knowledge, for all their power, they had reached a limit. And a human had stepped beyond it. The queen turned toward him fully. For the first time since he entered the chamber, she no longer looked at him like an anomaly. She looked at him like an answer. The silence stretched. Heavy. Meaningful. And in that moment, the entire empire understood something they had never considered before. The celestial rift was not a barrier. It was not a weapon. It was not a natural phenomenon. It was a system. Gate. And it had chosen someone. Not the most advanced. Not the most powerful. Not the most ancient. Human. Elias stood there, calm and steady, as the weight of that truth settled over him. He didn't fully understand why. He didn't know what waited on the other side. But one thing was certain. Whatever had marked him wasn't finished. And whatever came next, humanity would face it first. No one moved. Not the queen. Not the nobles. Not even the guards who had once prepared to contain him. 'Cause everything had changed. The chamber was no longer the center of power. Elias Vance was. Not as a ruler. Not as a weapon. But as something far more dangerous. Bridge. Above them, the glowing path through the celestial rift remained stable, pulsing slowly like a living heartbeat. For centuries, it had been a graveyard of lost fleets. Now it was a doorway. And it was open. Elias looked around the chamber one last time. He saw it clearly now, the shift in every face. These beings, who once stood as untouchable masters of the galaxy, were now witnesses. Not leaders of this moment. Observers of it. The queen stepped closer. This time there was no hesitation. No fear. Only quiet understanding. She did not try to stop him. She did not try to control what came next. Because even she knew. This was no longer her empire's decision. This was bigger. Elias exhaled slowly. His gaze returning to the glowing path above. He could still feel it. That presence. Not distant anymore. Not mysterious. Familiar. Waiting. Not for orders. For choice. And that was the difference. The galaxy had spent centuries trying to force the unknown to submit. Humanity did something else. They chose to step into it. Freely. Without guarantees. Without fear of failure. That was why it answered. Elias placed a hand lightly over the fading glow on his chest. The wound was still there. Still alive. Still connected. But now he understood it. It wasn't damage. It wasn't a scar. It was an invitation. Behind him, the entire imperial court watched in silence. For the first time in their history, they did not know what would happen next. And that uncertainty belonged to a human. Elias smiled faintly. Not because he had all the answers, but because he didn't. And that had never stopped humanity before. He took a step forward. Then another. The light above responded instantly. Brightening, expanding, welcoming. The chamber trembled softly, reacting to something far beyond its design. The path was no longer just visible. It was calling. And this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him, distant but unmistakable, human ships would come. Explorers, scientists, dreamers. The kind of people who looked at the impossible and asked one simple question. What's next? Elias stopped just at the edge of the light. For a brief moment he turned back. The queen met his gaze. No words were needed. An understanding passed between them. Respect, acknowledgement, and something more. Oh. Then Elias looked forward again. Into the unknown. Into something no civilization had ever reached. And without hesitation, he stepped through. The light consumed him. The chamber fell silent once more. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was awe. Because every being present understood the truth now. The gate had not opened for power. It had not opened for knowledge. Had not opened for control. It had opened for humanity. And as the human vanished into the light, the galaxy realized something terrifying. The unknown didn't just exist anymore. It had finally found someone willing to explore it.